1919, 1945, and 1989. All these dates are firmly rooted in the memory of the German people, and it is very difficult for them to forget them because they are linked to historical transformations that had a major role in shaping Germany which we know today. Doubt is 2022. This year the Germans saw how many problems and challenges are very strange. The crises that can usually happen to any natural country within 10 years happened to Germany in how many months? But Germany entered 2022 and is still suffering from the consequences of the coronavirus crisis and its variants. The Russian-Ukrainian war, due to which the German economy is currently subjected to one of the most violent shocks in its history and at the height of their despondency in the gas problem with Russia. Climate changes and droughts have caused the water level in the most important river in the country to drop to very critical levels, leaving ships unable to sail normally. However, the problem is coming to Germany at the worst possible time. In fact, it is a disaster for their economy, the effect of which is never less than the impact of the Russian-Ukrainian war. In short, the situation in Germany is getting worse every day. What happened before in this country is a labor force that is located in Dadeira. What exactly is happening in Germany? Why did the water level in the Rhine drop? How does this affect the prices of fuel, food, commodities, and energy in general? Why did the shipping costs in the country rise to record levels? What are Germany's options in facing this problem? How could the German economy be affected if the Rhine River crisis was prolonged? This is part of what we will chat about with each other in this day's episode. I am Reg, let's go. In June, the German Minister of Economy Robert Habeck announced that Germany will again restart some coal-fired power stations after they were closed before that in the context of preserving the power, the environment, and its fight against the problem of climate change. According to the minister's words, at the time Germany is in a very dangerous situation because there are great doubts about its ability to dictate its gas stocks before the next winter, especially after Russian President Vladimir Putin started manipulating the Germans by reducing the quantities of Russian gas exported to Germany through a pipeline. Nord Stream 1. Germany, in order to secure itself, is trying to reduce its consumption of natural gas at the present time as much as possible. In this context, it decided to return to relying again on environmentally harmful coal to generate electricity. The German plan today is to reopen stations operating with ordinary coal with a total capacity of 6.9 GW and reopening plants operating with lignite or brown coal with a capacity of 1.9 GW and oil operating plants with a capacity of 1.6 GW. It is assumed that restarting these stations will help Germany. They will save 52% of the gas they currently consume in power generation within only 12 months. But the Germans' misfortune is that two calamities met them at the same time. They destroyed almost all their plans. Simply, the German government is trying to escape from the effects of the Russian-Ukrainian war from this side. On the other hand, there is a catastrophe called drought and the low water level in the Rhine River. For those of you who do not know, the Rhine River is the longest and most important river in Europe. This river is considered one of the pillars of the economies of Germany, the Netherlands, France, and Switzerland, simply because it is used to transport nearly 300 million tons of goods and commodities every year. From the first chemicals for fuel and paper to grain and food in general, and one of the most important goods transported by barges is coal. The Germans are unable to transport sufficient quantities of coal from the mines to their power stations and are also unable to transport sufficient quantities of fuel either internally or externally with their European neighbors, as we said a little while ago, because the water level in the river has fallen to critical levels. Let me explain to you the story in more detail along the Rhine River in Germany, specifically in the west of Frankfurt. There is a small country called Co. The depth of the Rhine is the lowest in Germany. That is why the Germans are working in the country. This is a station for measuring the water level in the river, especially since it is located almost in the middle of the river. On August 13, the water level in Co has reached 36 centimeters, and this is the lowest level since 1993. Here it is necessary to take into account a very important thing: the 36 centimeters are not the full depth of the Rhine River in Cuba. No, we speak on the scale of the community in terms of navigation. They use it in calculating the draft or the submersible guys. Any ship that travels in the river in particular will have two scales called deep draft and air draft. Deep draft is the ground clearance or what distance between the lowest point in the hull of the ship and the bottom of the river. The air draft remains or the air clearance on the other side is the distance between the highest point in the hull of the ship and the bridges under which the ships walk. On these two scales the tonnage of the ship is determined. For a river a lot or less, I mean for example the water level in the river is low and accordingly the deep draft is little. In this case the ships will have to reduce the size of their cargo because the hull of the ship does not hit the bottom and sink into its place. It does not know how to go right or left even if the opposite happens and the water level is high. The tonnage must be increased so that the volume of the submersible increases below and the air draft or the air clearance above increases, and thus the ship avoids colliding with any ferry bridge under it, which what happened in Germany today is the first case. This is the first case. The water level in the Rhine is so low that it impedes a large part of river shipping, and by the way the problem is in the area just of Co, but I mean ships can sail this day in Rhine River. It is very normal, but you will come to Cape where the riverbed is high and the water level is low and it will stop, and there the ship must control its cargo until it anchors at the water level in Kobe. As I said from a little while, the lower the water level in the river the less the ships have to reduce their load. So that they do not crash into the bottom of the day, these ships in Germany are forced to walk with a quarter of their normal load due to the low water level in the river. I mean the ship, 3/4 of it empty, and the cargo that one ship could carry in one trip, 4 ships are required to transport it in 4 trips. The water level in Cuba is currently less than 40 centimeters, and this is a big problem because the 40 centimeters are the lowest level of ships that can carry loads, make the shipping process profitable from a commercial point of view. Imagine for example that the level in a cup is 30 centimeters, but at the level of this ship you cannot carry more than 1/10 of its normal cargo. I mean if you normally carry 100 tons you will not know in this case more than 10 tons, but because you know in this case the shipping process will not be useful for the shipping company. Imagine fuel, labor and maintenance on 1/10 of the cargo of the ship. In order to be able to cross the entire cargo of the ship from the Rhine, the water level in Cuba must not be less than 1.5 meters. By the way, there is nothing in Germany that prevents ships by law. It sails at any level of the river. Ship owners are free. The level is low. Do you want to walk in the river with your full load? You are free. We will not prevent you, but it is your responsibility. The drop in the river level will translate immediately in the form of less shipping activity and an increase in river shipping prices in general. River freight rates on the Rhine have recently risen 5 times. For example, in June a liquid transport vessel was offloading cargo from Rotterdam in the Netherlands to Karlsruhe in Germany for €20 per ton. In August, precisely on the 5th of May, a ton is still shipped with about €96. We are talking about 5 times in less than 2 months. Of course, these high shipping prices are immediately reflected in the prices of goods and products not only in Germany but in all countries that depend on river shipping, especially Germany. Every year around a ton of goods and merchandise are shipped across Europe's rivers for every single person residing in the European Union, and is a means of transportation that contributes about $80 billion to the region's economy. The effect on prices can be direct or indirect. For example, one of the repercussions of the decline in shipping activities in the Rhine River is the high electricity price in Germany. Recently, on August 16, the price of megawatts an hour in Germany reached €490, more than double the price in June. The Rhine River plays a major role in transporting the fuel that power stations in Germany operate with. For example, this river normally passes through it 400,000 tons of petroleum products per day, and other than millions of tons of coal. These quantities are all threatened that they will not reach their final destination, and this will put more pressure on the German energy sector, which is already in crisis due to the Russian-Ukrainian war. Germany's Uniper says it can ship coal to its power plants by train and warned against reducing production at the Staudinger 5 plant in September due to a shortage of coal. This company's statement raises an important question: why German companies do not transport goods on land, meaning trains, railways, or trucks. Unfortunately, this is not a viable option. First, the railways in Germany are already suffering from very severe congestion recently, and therefore there is no available capacity that can accommodate Even a small part of the huge quantities of goods that are transported by river ships, a medium-sized river barge, we tried to transport the load that this barge carries on the road through trucks too. You think we will need how many trucks to unload one barge? 110 trucks. Now, from your point of view, are these trucks a practical alternative to river transport, whether in terms of the complexity of the shipping process or its cost? Let me tell you that the Germans, even if they wanted to rely on road transport, would not even know. This country suffers from a deficit in the number of truck drivers, reaching 80,000 drivers. A large part of this deficit is caused by the Ukrainian drivers returning to their country at the beginning of the war with Russia. Germany, until this day, unable to avoid the impact of the drop in the water level in the Rhine by 40 centimeters or 35 centimeters. This is a very low water level in the Co-region in the Rhine, and I repeat again, folks, because I noticed that there are many people confused about this topic. This 40 centimeters is not the depth of the river. This is impossible at all. We are talking about the deep draft, or the ground clearance, which is the distance between the lowest part of the ship's hull and the bottom. In normal times, the distance under the ship could have exceeded 2 meters. But the situation is now completely different, and this situation is nothing but one solution, and this solution is that the rain is falling heavily. The German economy in general and the industrial sector in particular will suffer, because the Rhine is his lifeline through which very vital goods and products pass, and in his absence factories and large companies close. Let me give you a quick example. Of course, you all know the German chemical giant BASF. This company recently warned that it could reduce its production due to its inability to secure its needs of raw materials, a large part of which passes through the Rhine River. And this is the same thing that the credit rating agency Moody's warned of, which said that the drop in the water level in the Rhine will increase the costs of chemical companies, especially companies whose production facilities are located near the river. This river runs through the middle of the Swiss and German industrial zones before flowing into the North Sea at the very busy port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands. It remains unseaworthy because of a medical disaster. How big is this disaster? Let me tell you that this is not the first problem of this type that the Rhine River is exposed to. This river had the same problem before that, specifically in 2018, but to a somewhat lesser degree, and at that time the shipping activity was disrupted for a while and the economies of the region lost more than 5 billion euros. Today the economists are talking about the possibility of losing the German GDP, which is worth close to $3.6 trillion, for about 0.5% of its growth due to the drop in the water level in the Rhine. The usual, at the end of each episode, I have a question for you. Many countries of the world are currently suffering from water scarcity and shortages. In your opinion, can we witness wars between countries over water in the coming years? I will follow all your answers in the comments, and in the end I hope you like the episode and would like to see us again. Subscribe to the channel and wait for new episodes.